Welcome back to the News Hub here at WSJ Live. I'm Simon Constable. The NFL is backing down today after doling out harsh punishments to New Orleans Saints players. Wall Street Journal reporter Kevin Clark joins us now to discuss. So, Kevin, will the Saints come marching back now?
Well, as an organization, probably. They're going to get Jonathan Vilma back forever. He was suspended for the entire season. That suspension was lifted beginning of the season. Now it's vacated. There were 4 players implicated in this bounty scheme, pay for play, whatever you want to call it. Ex-commissioner Paul Tagliabue was the judge, jury, and executioner today, and he said, you know what? All of these guys did something wrong, but it wasn't enough for these suspensions, and so the Saints players have had their names cleared.
Is it two things? Is it normal to get these harsh punishments doled out, and is when they are, is it normal to have them vacated, or is it both exceptional in both cases?
This is unprecedented in both cases, in both instances.
So never as harsh before.
Never as harsh, and never had they backtracked like this before. Roger Goodell, who's the current commissioner, saw how much heat he was getting for both the penalties and the way he handled it. So he had to have kind of a neutral observer. Brought in the old commissioner, who obviously had dealt with a lot of these issues before. The old commissioner said basically today, you know what, Roger, you messed up. And so it's an unprecedented step for the NFL to sort of acknowledge that they messed up at bringing in someone like this, and now this ugly chapter that's gone on since March is basically over.
So doling out sanctions, punishments, whatever it is, normally has, in most organizations, has a very measured approach, and there's a lot of process to it. This reeks of sort of shooting from the hip. I mean, just the way you've told it says it was very harsh, and then, okay, it was too harsh, and then we're going to take it back. Both unprecedented. Is there the process not in place, or is it just badly executed?
It was badly executed. The process under the collective bargaining agreement is basically that Roger Goodell can do whatever he wants. If he wanted to suspend,
so he can shoot from the hip.
He can shoot from the hip, and so that was part of the problem with this. This whole scene has been bad from the start because Goodell can do whatever he wants, and so out of fairness, he brought it to the appeals panel, he brought it to the collective bargaining agreement panel, and finally to Paul Tagliabue, the ex-commissioner. And so he never had to do any of this. He could have just said, you know what, Jonathan Vilma, you're suspended for the entire year. And so really, this is so
that is part of the process, and he's being very sort of magnanimous in this.
Yeah. I mean, he's softened since obviously suspending the 4 players in March. But it's basically a systematic failure, just because the players allow Roger to do this under the collective bargaining agreement, and they signed off on it. So it's their fault as much as anyone's.
So tell us more about this. I mean, this is got to be a bit of a black eye for the commissioner, because it's basically his entire judgment vacated, reversed. He's in retreat, and these guys are pretty macho. They don't like to retreat. So is it a black eye? Does it undermine his credibility? And the other thing is, are they going to put in a process in future that is not just his dictates?
To the last question, I don't think so. I think that Goodell will continue on having the power he has, at least until the next collective bargaining agreement. But as for whether or not this is a black eye, there were small victories for the NFL. First of all, Tagliabue concluded that they were doing something wrong. There was a bounty scheme, but it was just, it wasn't suspendable. It was finable. Is what he was saying.
It was money, not playing. You got to keep playing.
Right. You can keep playing, but these things are a $50,000 fine, $100,000 fine. You shouldn't suspend somebody for the season.
Let's hope we don't get fined like that, because that would be really bad. So Sean Payton, the coach, what about him?
He was not involved in this. There's no coaches union that fights back like the players union, and so he'll stay on the sidelines. Mickey Loomis, the general manager.
So he must be a bit steamed about this, right?
Oh yeah.
Is that like justice? I mean, he stays on the sidelines. All these other guys, he's just as guilty.
Well, I do think that he and the rest of the organization are still going to be vilified by the NFL for misleading investigators, and that was part of this whole thing in the spring, was that they maybe weren't as truthful as they could have been when the investigators came to town, and NFL security came to town and said what's happening. And so I think if the NFL wants to make a case that Payton deserves this, they can, just because he wasn't very forthcoming when the investigation started.
Well, I mean, it was the cover-up, right? It is a cover-up.
Right.
But I can see. I mean, I would see him sitting there. I mean, do you think he'll sue or anything? Or
no, Jonathan Vilma is still suing the league, who was suspended for a year. He's suing Goodell for defamation. But other than that, that's the only ongoing legal thing. I think Payton is just going to take his year off, his lost salary, and move on for next year.
Okay, well, we wish everyone luck on that one. Thank you very much, Kevin Smith of the Wall Street Journal. And you can read more on that on WSJ.com.